Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's 2 o'clock, so we shall start our session 3. So welcome to this Master Thesis Project Seminar course. This is a webinar series uh, initiated by Collab Group together with the faculty and students from the Philippine Christian University Graduate School Program. So we shall start with our community prayer. Let us include in our prayer our celebration for the month, no? Which is the labor force. So we would like to pray for each and everyone. Pray for labor's equity, pray for labor's productivity, and we also pray for those among us who can't join with us this afternoon because of this pandemic. So sad, but hopefully with our gathering this afternoon, we share the strength, we share the unity among us.
Lord, let your servant go in peace, for your word has been fulfilled. Lord, let your servant go in peace, for your word has been fulfilled. A child shall be born to the Virgin, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. Lord, let your servant go in peace, for your word has been fulfilled. My own eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all men. Lord, let your servant go in peace, for your word has been fulfilled. The night shall reveal to the nations, and the glory of your people Israel. Lord, let your servant go in peace, for your word has been fulfilled. Lord, let your servant go in peace, for your word has been fulfilled. Lord, let your servant go in peace.
Together with our personal intentions, our personal prayer, we all offer this to God our Father. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us pause for a while and join in the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang mag-ibig, helas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y bumay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa gagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mo pagaw, ay hinatang tulang awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iingin, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay di magdidinig. Luman ang araw ng walhaging pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hinigaya ng pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again to each and everyone. We welcome you all to this third session. This is our last but not the least, no? Our third session for this webinar series for research that matters. Our dear President, Dr. Junipen Guanan, has been present for the rest of the meetings or our sessions, from the first one, which was our orientation, and then the first session and the second session. And this third session, he mentioned about something came out, but I think she will join us later, no, this afternoon. But let me just emphasize for the rest of the other sessions which our president has joined us. He talked about any research is significant if it contributes just a grain of new knowledge to our universe of old ideas. So that, I think that was the last message he gave us, no, for the session 2, no, last Sunday. So we wish the president, no, to join us shortly. And then we also would like to acknowledge our PCU administrators for, again, no, for the last meetings. They were with us, no? Dr. Margie de la Cruz, the chair of the PCU, Transnational Education and Extension Program. She welcomed us all to this initiative. No? This is an initiative of MM Collab Group, no? As me as the site coordinator, together with the faculty members, and of course the students, no? Of which this is for augmenting, no? Enabling our skills on research as we are enrolled in this 6 units for masters and then 12 units for the doctor's program, doctoral degree program. And then we also had the director of research and publication, Dr. Jaime Ang. He mentioned us the uh, 5-year development plan, no, of research agenda of the university. So I think what was emphasized there was on research that impacts on social development and national development. Uh, our president, Dr. Guanan, gave us two presentations, two PowerPoints, no, on his memorandum order or his memo on uh, how to write an incisive research output. So from knowing our interests, digesting or uh, looking at into those interests and how we can produce, whether it is a policy or towards implementing a development plan or an output, no, for research. So we thank our PCU administrators for joining us, no, for the sessions that we had. And so this afternoon, as mentioned earlier, this is our third. So we have here our infographics. No? So we started with April 18, and then we had April 25. And then today is our last day. No? So we have here 4 resource speakers to share their thoughts and their expertise and insights on research that really matters. Uh, the first day we had Dr. Vera from Russian University. She mentioned about integrating financial assets, reporting that, no, through digitized, access to information. So I think that would be a very good source of data, no, which we can take a look into, no, on what Dr. Vera had shared to us. And then the BPAA of Isabela State University, Dr. Boyet Batang, mentioned about the 5 rigors of process or scientific process on research and the data, Privacy Act 10173, which was mentioned and well exemplified, no, in the sharing of Dr. Balute, no, and also the concept of capstone. And then last Sunday we had Dr. Sala from the Open University of Sudan. So she walked us through on the feasibility study and how to present, no, our output in terms of projects. No? So she's the Dean of Economics and Finance. And Dr. Barbara Wong, Dr. Barbie, emphasize on the protocols on how to also maybe perhaps an interest of our research, which is on design qualitative, research design. And inferential descriptive statistics were shared to us by Professor Tolitz, Dr. Bengo, last Sunday. So these are our scheduled for this semester. So these are intended for those enrolled in the master's project and thesis course. So for our students, in the doctoral program, you will have your dissertation next semester. So practically, I mentioned to our resource speaker that this is intended for a set of students under the master's program, but everyone is invited under MM Collab Group. So this afternoon, I am so honored, or I'm so pleased, that I had another 4 yeses from these resource speakers joining us this afternoon. So sad. I would like to make an announcement. It's so sad that 30 minutes ago, Dr. Nanta from the Open University of Malaysia called me up. He has to be rushed to the hospital because of his results on the test So something wrong, with the result of his test, no? And he has to be rushed to the hospital. He mentioned that if given a chance that there is another session that he will join. He promised that he will share his presentation. It's in the slide share. So later tonight, no, he promised that he will share it to us, no, in a PowerPoint format. So I think we wish speedy help, no, for Dr. Nanta at this time. Okay, but this afternoon we will have Dr. Leo. Dr. Leo is the research director of Capiz State University. So Dr. Leo will talk about the nuances of action research. I think Dr. Leo will give us a background on his works and agenda, no, as the research director of the university. So it's a state university, and then as you know, as I have been observing in his social media, presenting the development outputs on research-based products, no, on his university towards producing processed products, processed goods, no? And I personally tasted some, no, of that output. No? So we will have Dr. Leo in a short while, and really I am indebted, no, with Dr. Boo. I would like to call him Attorney Boo. So Attorney Boo is around. He is already here with us. No? Attorney Boo is the physician, lawyer, pathologist. So Dr. Boo will share about medical research. I think this will benefit a lot, no, from those students enrolled under Master on Hospital Administration and Public Health. So Attorney Boo is here. Thank you so much, Attorney Boo. And the fourth resource speaker is actually, we were in the same university, in the undergrad. We were never classmates, but I don't know why we glued together. No? And Dr. Mercy is she's a Fulbright grantee, scholar, and Metrobank awardee, outstanding teacher. So I invited her to join with us for sharing on how we can communicate our research output. So I told her earlier, this is our first engagement that is formal. So we usually see each other until now, no, informal. No? So this afternoon, Dr. Mercy will talk about sharing her expertise also on research. And all of them, they are teaching in the graduate school at their own respective universities. So Dr. Mercy Handayan Labial is from the city of Golden Friendship, no, our province, which is Cagayan de Oro City. Okay, to our resource speaker, thank you so much. I would like to introduce our set of students present this afternoon, our dear resource speakers. Dr. Leo, Dr. Mercy, Attorney Boo. Attorney Boo is also teaching, no, with us. No? So for the rest of the other guests this afternoon, our set of students for MM Group, no, taking up programs, master's and doctoral degrees at the Philippine Christian University. They're ranging from those that are enrolled in the master's program, majoring hospital administration, public health administration, public administration, and then we have business administration. We also have crisis management. Students also enrolled in environmental planning management, and then we also have international tourism management, master in management in accounting, and then our and educational management. And then for our PhD students, they are enrolled under development management for public governance and education governance, and one that is a business management in the specialization of strategy and leadership and management. So ito po yung aming mga estudyante sa Collab Group, no, for PCU. So we welcome you all, our resource speakers, for this afternoon session. So we should have started with Dr. Nanta, but nonetheless, we shall start with Dr. Leo Andrew Biclar. Good afternoon, Doc Leo.
Good afternoon, Doc Matt, to the PCU
And
president, okay,
share.
and of course to the other administrators of the Philippine Christian University, to the graduate students and fellow resource persons, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. So let me share my screen. Okay, so good afternoon once again.
Would you like to share it in full size, sir, Doc Leo?
Yes, sir. Is it visible?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So that's thank you for this opportunity, Doc Matt, for inviting me to share the journey that I have in the research world. So the task assigned to me is the topic on the action research, and along with this lecture or presentation, I'll be sharing as well some of the initiatives and the journey that I have or that I am conducting right now to fit with the type of audience that we have. We have the business administration, the public governance, students, and so on. All right, so this is it. Let's do it. The art and science of action research. So I am Leo Andrew Biclar from Capital State University. Unless you have visited Capiz, we are rich in the with seafoods and tourism activities as well. We are away to Boracay, away to Iloilo, and hopefully you can pass by when all this pandemic ends. No. So here's the journey. Okay. So before I'll start with everything, so let me share to you this kind of video for reflection and for thinking on what we can do in our research journey.
Kasi nga, yung asawa niya, 2 years na hindi nakauwi. Konting pera lang yung pinapadala ng kanyang asawa. Kasi nga, merong bisyo yung kanyang asawa. Hindi niya ma-provide yung needs ng kanilang mga anak. Mayroon silang 4 na anak. Isa din sa mga challenges niya ay yung pag-aaral ng kanyang mga anak. Kasi grade 4 lamang siya. At sinasabi niya kung ano lang yung alam niya bilang grade 4, yun na din yung maitutulong niya sa kanyang mga anak. So sumasama siya. Nagle-labor siya para mag-harvest ng mga mais. At dala-dala niya yung mga anak niya. Ang hirap na dinadanas niya ay isang ehemplo lamang o isang senaryo lamang na makikita natin na mahirap talaga yung buhay nila. aspirations ni Marlene ay na-validate ko po nang pumunta ako sa isa pang community na ate. Doon po na tagpuan namin na merong isang um, anak ng ate na nagiging guru na pero underboard po siya. Yung ginagawa niya is siya yung tinitipon niya yung mga bata sa kanilang komunidad at siya yung nagtuturo para masagutan yung modules ng mga bata. Meron siyang 3 groups, yung kinder, grade 1 at grade 3 na mga kabataan. Ang mahirap sa sitwasyon niya ngayon ay buntis siya. Hindi siya makakaikot o sa kanilang community na makapagturo. So yung ginagawa niya, pumupunta sa kanilang bahay yung mga bata. Bilang isang para-teacher, si Ma'am Rose ay tumatanggap lamang ng 4,000 bilang kanyang sahod. Mula January hanggang sa ngayon, hindi pa siya nakasahod sa munisipyo. Kahit 4,000 lang yung sahod niya. Noong December, nagawa niyang magpatayo ng isang barong-barong, isang maliit na bahay. At sa bahay na iyon, nagkaroon pa ng isang espasyo para doon siya magtuturo sa mga bata. So bilang isang guru din, makikita ko dito yung adhikain na sa persona ni Ma'am Rose. Yung mas importante sa kanya ay matuturuan niya yung mga bata. At kung minsan nga, yung kakainin pa nila, binibili niya pa ng merienda para doon sa mga bata. So isang selfless aspiration para sa isang guro dahil sa kanya, sa umpisa niyang turuan ng magbasa at sumulat at magtala. Isa sa mga informant na na-interview.
Okay, so yun po ang isang journey na I have conducted or I'm involved with when I have the sensing activities with the Ati community in our place here in Dumaraw. So the video shows that there would be a thing to be done or the actions to be done in the case of this Ati community. The Ati community or the Ati is one of the indigenous peoples group here in our copies. So I'll go back to that later, no? So in this presentation, I have the following outlines. I'll have the definition of what research is, then the context of the word action, what's an action research, the types of action research, then the phases, the tools needed in data gathering of the action research, and the procedures on how we would analyze the data in action research. All right. So to start, according to this fellow, Mr. Braun says that research is what I'm doing when I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So actually, everything that we do, if we don't know it, then we do research. All right. And of course, and this fellow also, he says that research is a contribution to human knowledge, and knowledge is social. Society is the only institution that makes our academic works useful. So this is what I am living with. That all the things that we do in our academies or in our academic works, it's always beneficial to the target communities or to the target audience that we have. Okay, otherwise our research activities would be nothing, and it will just earn cobwebs from the shops, as what been mentioned by the other speakers in the previous sessions. All right. So taking into the notion of the word action, so it Miriam Dictionary defines the word action as it's a thing to be done. It has the accomplishment of a thing that involves a period of time, stages, or processes, and within the possibility of repeating those actions. Okay, and of course, secondly, it has the will, no, of the persons or the group of persons who will be involved in taking actions. So that's how we understand research and its context. So what is the relation now of research and the word action? Okay, so combined with the ideas of the fellows that were mentioned, Dickey in 2001 stated that action research is a problem-based method of professional self-development undertaken by an individual or group or small group, which involves one, the systematic collection, and second, the analysis of data related to everyday practices. Okay, so again, the second, the two things that have to be underscored here are the systematic collection and analysis of data when we do the action research. So it is still based on science. And according to Braun in 2001 as well, he says that action research involves flexible spiral process, which allows action, and that action is a change or an improvement. And second, research, which refers to the understanding and production of knowledge. And these two have to be achieved at the same time. Okay. So again, we will go back into that spiral definition of burn in of the action research. So we have the two types of action research. The first one is the participatory action research, which is based, no, upon the notion that researchers should work together with research participants or the beneficiary to help them address, understand, or improve local issues or dilemmas that they have. So that's excerpt from Sarah in her book Qualitative Research Methods. So again, in this type of action research, it's only the researcher, you know, who would work with um, with the community or the participants. And then the second type is the community-based participatory action research, in which this type of research advocates research in which subaltern and marginalized communities take the lead. Okay, so in this case, the star or the focus would be the marginalized communities or sectors in which the researcher would only act as the innovator and then form the linkages on how with other agencies or sectors that would help in the concerns of these marginalized communities. So it requires the respect, rigorous incorporation of members' input, creating results that directly help the community in need, and sensitivity to have ways to the ways research is shared. Okay. So as what we have said, Bern said that the research would have the spiral action, whether it's a participatory or the CBP community base, it would go with the spiral action. Okay, so we have here, and like for example, in the first cycle, everything starts with knowing what's the problem, what has to be done, what issues or what needs that the participants or the community would have, and that would start with the diagnosing of activities. So um, based on the gathering of data on what the needs of the communities are, then we have to plan an action. Okay, so planning an action, and that would involve the identification of the different stakeholders involved. That would also involve the identification of the key players in the change and the development of knowledge. So, and then after planning the action, then we will implement the action. Okay, So implementing the action would entail also the monitoring and evaluation if the action has made the change, or there are some things to be improved in that actions that had been planned and implemented. So it goes with the evaluating of action. Then if we have found out that there are things to be improved, then we will go into the cycle. So the things again would go cyclic activities, diagnosing, planning, and so on, until we reach into the term sustainability of the projects that we have implemented. Okay. So here, what are the tools to consider in each phase of the action? Going back to to the spiral form of the action research. Okay. So in the first step, for example, by diagnosing, we can make use of the needs assessment. We can conduct the problem tree analysis, in which, in this case, um, I am presenting an example of the problem tree analysis in the capstone project that I have, in which, for example, in the Ati community, I found out during the sensing journey that the Ati community could not sell their agricultural produce. Okay. So because of some problems that they encounter, that would be the causes of the problems, like they are not educated on how to manage their products and how to manage their harvest. Secondly, they are experiencing the limited mobility, for example, and then of course the location of their community, which is far from the market, and then the harvest, the other harvested their products which they planted before the pandemic. So all these things are the causes, for example, that they have encountered with the problem, that on the oversupply and value chain issues, because aside from the value oversupply, the middlemen would buy their products in a very low price. Okay. So after the problem, then we have to identify what could be the effects of this problem. Then, so still the ATI would remain marginalized. They would rely on the inadequate assistance of the government. Then the products are bought by the middlemen at a very low price, and then they threw some of their products because these are now useless and become rotten. Okay, so and that effects would make the ATI or the beneficiaries of this project remain poor and still experience the realm of poverty. All right. So this is just an example of the problem tree analysis in diagnosing of what could be the problem that the communities or our target participants are encountering. Okay. So second phase is the planning of action. Okay. So in this plan, the systems map that I have used presents the different focal persons and other stakeholders that would have the role in changing the lives of the beneficiaries. So the focal person, for example, here, or in the focal system, we have the ATI, we have the family and LGU, would have the direct initiative that could make or implemented with the focal systems, and they belong to the subsystems. And then we have the other key holders, stakeholders in the macro systems, like the middlemen, the Chamber of Commerce, the People's Organization, DSWDDA, and DTI. So these are the macro systems, are the concerned agencies in which somehow they can help in the implementation of the proposed action to the focal system. Then we have the mega system, the national agencies, in which you can link on for the implementation of the project. This could be like your funding agencies that would have the direct benefits as well as funding agencies, no, of the project that have to be implemented. Then you have the outside the circle is the diplomatic organization or organizations like the UNDP, the Indigenous World, global organizations or institutions. So these members of the systems map would be useful in identifying your stakeholders. Okay, so still part of your plan is to identify the stakeholders in which in this aspect you would be analyzing the possible position of those identified the persons or organizations in the project that you will be implementing, like if they are for example the ATI is the target group in the change, then we have the family, they are the ones who can support in the change. And then if they are also the oppositor, for example, because the middleman would likely become the oppositor in this change or do not support with the change. And of course, our agency where the researcher belongs would be the main actor or the innovator in that change that will be implemented. Then of course, you can present their interests, the resources, the mobilization capacity, and then the form of communication that they will have in order to help you implement in the project or action that you will be taking with the community. Okay. Next phase is the taking of action. Okay. So in the last visit that I have with the Ate community, I've found out, for example, that they have this produce the kamute, they have the puso ng saging, and there are a lot of harvest with their corn, yellow corn. So what I did is that um, I posted immediately in my Facebook page having the knowledge on how to do the snap buy, how to do the group buys, and so on. So I posted the goods, and within 30 minutes, I have not reached even in our office. All these goods are already sold. My coworkers, my colleagues had already posted and bought or commented and bought the goods of this ati. So in this case, we are helping the ati on to become resilient by taking an action to do the digital market of their agricultural products. And then part of it, we can do also the capacity building and then the technology transfer and how to manage their agricultural products. All right. So that's part of taking the action in the cycle of action research. But of course, in the action that we have designed or the plan that we have designed, we have to consider the different characteristics. The first one, it should be ethical, or it must have the ethical commitment to improvement. Then you have the cycle of reflective practice. So by evaluating what things could be improved, what action has to be repeated, then we have to reflect on this. Then it should be collaborative as what you have stated in your systems map and the stakeholders map. So you have to collaborate with these agencies or sectors in implementing your project. Then of course
Ng
you have to make
Alex.
this project
Masarap ba?
visible to the market.
Nagpaano sila?
Okay. So we have to make this project visible to the market. So here, as what you have seen in the framework of analysis, no, there's the problem, then the major causes of the problem, then your strategy. The whole program is what we call Kumbuya Hanay for the Ate community. Kumbuya Hanay means to go together, We no one will left behind, and we go together for the improvement, for the betterment of the society. So that's the context of Kumbuya Hanay. And then you have the components, the capacity building and the innovative marketing strategy. And then hopefully you have that desired outcomes of the action that you will be taking with the community. And that is to make the ATI, for example, an economically empowered and resilient community. And by doing that, we are adhering to the Philippine Development Plan of our government, which is that all Filipinos would have the matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay. Okay? So that's the end goal of our project, no, the long-term goal of our project. Okay? Okay. And then, of course, after the implementation of the whole project, you have to evaluate. No, sorry, it's not yet the implementation of the whole project, but implementation of the action that we have conducted with our recipients or our beneficiaries. Then we have to evaluate it by conducting, for example, the focus group discussions with the stakeholders or with the concerned agencies wherein this how this project had helped them, or how they would see the project, whether it's good or whether there's something to be improved. Okay, so you have the focus group discussion, or you can have also the key informant interviews with direct beneficiary, for example. In that, you can validate whether the claims of the stakeholders would also be the same with that of your beneficiaries. Okay, so also conduct the focus group discussion with the beneficiaries or the ATIs. Okay, so in this aspect, in during the evaluation, we are coordinating with the different sectors, and then validating if the results of the within the focus group discussion conducted with the other sectors and the beneficiary sectors would have the same, or there are things that had to be um, improved and re-implemented in the phase of the project. Okay, and of course, the next step that we have to do is to collect the data in this action research that we are doing. So there are different tools that we can make use, like for example, the self-assessment form, wherein before the conduct of the project, you have to list down all the things that you will be needing, and that would be reflected in your implementation plan, which later I will be presenting as well. We have to make an assessment whether this was achieved or this was conducted, then and so on. Then on the training needs assessment, we can make use of the questionnaire. Then aside from that, we can do also the observation. So by sensing in the conduct of the research is very important, and we call that environmental scanning. Before you do the proposals, before you formulate your statement of the problem, you have to go first within the community, no, and sense what their needs are, so that you can write up all things that you have observed that need to be addressed, and all the concerns that they have. So observation is very important. Then you can do the checklist or inventories. Then you can conduct the interview, one-on-one interview. Okay, and then of course during the interview you have to select the um, the participant by conducting or crafting first your inclusion and exclusion criteria. Like for example, it must be an ate, he must have the product, he must have the experience on, or the experience on having the oversupply as the problem, and so on. So although other artists are having the same dilemma, but the one who have suited or fitted with your inclusion exclusion criteria would be your participants in the interview. Then you can have also the focus group discussions, and then of course in doing the participatory and immersion, you must have your diaries or journal. So this could be the tools that you can make use in gathering data with your action research. Okay. So next, we have the procedures on how to analyze the data. So what the tools could have recorded would be analyzed using, for example, here in the in vivo coding. Like for example, first, of course, we conducted the interview with the participants, we transcribe, then we map the major concepts based on the statement of the problems that we have. Then we code these themes from the objectives, and then assembling of tables and charts assisted with the cluster of codes, meaning for what are those codes or what are those words that make that would support the main theme that you have identified. The themes could be the one that you can frame on, or coming directly from the mouths of the participants, meaning the words that were uttered by the participants themselves. Okay, so those are the two ways of how you would make the main themes of your data analysis. And then of course you have to describe the meaning of each codes. Like for example, we have like for example how this oversupply means to them, and how you would support this with literature that all other sectors or communities in the world are also undergoing the oversupply because of the pandemic. No? Another tool that we can make use for the data analysis procedure is the six phase framework of doing thematic analysis, um, by Braun and Clark in 2006, in which he has this six steps of data analysis. The first one is we must become familiar with the data, of course. Since we already have transcribed all the data that we have gathered from the conduct of interview, from the conduct of observations, and so on, then we have to read and reread all this data. Okay. Otherwise, if we will just read once, then we could not make up the whole interpretation of it. Okay. So after reading and rereading the data, you have to generate the second step, which is to generate the initial codes. Okay. So coding this data. Again, the codes would still be reflective on the statement of the problems that you have formulated. And then search for the themes, and then review for the themes. In reviewing the themes, no, um, you have to revisit again if the data construed with what the words of, or the dialogues of the informants that you have, if the data is really the thing that they have uttered. Sometimes the one that you have recorded are the intangible data that you have gathered during your observation. So you have to go back onto this, if what are those statements of the informants that would support to the claim that you have, if your theme would come from the intangible observation that you have coded. Okay, and then you have to define the themes, make the interpretation, and of course The interpretation would have the literal up to the inferential, and even sometimes you can have add on the psychological interpretation of these themes, because it really matters that you can dig up an in-depth interpretation for this to make or to add meat to your results, no? And of course, the last phase is you have to write up. Okay, so writing up would be the end, would not be the end, of course, of the collection. During the write up, you would have some analysis that there are things to be improved again, then you have to go back into the cycle. Okay, so these are the tools that we can make use in analyzing our data in the action research. So in the action research, it is very important as well that we have to program our activities, no? So we can make use of the implementation plan that has the following parts or components. Like your objective, of course, your main objective is to properly implement the project. And then you have the major activity. You have to enumerate all your activities. Like, for example, part of it is the hiring of the research assistant. You cannot just make this type of research alone, no? You need the help of the world around you. So you have your research assistant to do the coding, and even in the making of communications or crafting the communications with the stakeholders, that would part of the job of the research assistant. Then you have the monitoring of the implementation plan and so on. The inception meeting, it is very important as well that you have to form the project team, no? Who would have the capability of being part in the implementation of the project. And then you conduct the inception meeting with this project team on how, what are the steps that they that both of you would do in order to implement a project. And of course, during the inception, you can also plan out on the strategies that you could make use in the implementation of the project. Okay, then parts of it is the time frame. Then of course the possible risks, no? You have to anticipate the possible risk in each step that you will be conducting, no? Including siguro in the risk that we have to address is the pandemic that we are experiencing right now. So again, with that risk, you have to address that risk, how you would treat, of course, by observing all the health protocols and coordinations with the local IATF before you would conduct your focus group discussions or going into the interview, going to the community before in the conduct of interview. So all these things, no, would be addressed, and of course all the activities that you have entail the budgetary requirement. Mobility means the money that you will be conducting, that you will be having in the implementation of the project. Okay, so that's the implementation plan. And then of course your communication plan, no? So for example, in designing your communication, you seek for the approval, and that is the message, no? For example, and then the person that you would be giving with that type of communication, the institutional partner or your agency, then the date, the medium of communication, like for example the memo, then what is the objective of that communication, to draw support, by whom, by the scholar, and of course the budgetary requirement for that matter, and all other messages that you would have. For example, the approval of the project team by institutional partner, then the target date, and then the medium would still be the memorandum order, and all other things up to the monitoring and evaluation of your project. So in other words, in this communication plan, no, would reflect all the activities that you will be conducting would entail the proper documentation, no, proper documentation like the memorandum or the, even in going to the community, you need that um, travel order from your agency for your own safety as well. And of course, you have the request for vehicle, for example. So you have to document all this, no, request letter, memorandum order, and so on. Okay, so that's part of the communication plan. Okay, so before I end up, I would like to leave this message that we conduct research, no, we conduct action research as a means of making a difference in the lives of the people we serve. Okay, and because we are servant, we have to make sure the measure of our success with the number of lives that you have helped better on, and not with the number of documents that we process or turn out. Then do not forget that you are in the service because you want to make things better for our community. Do not forget that you are in the service because you want to help your countrymen. Do not forget that you are in the service because you want to make a difference in the people's lives. And do not forget that you are in the service because you want to help build a better nation. And do not forget that you are in the service because of those you serve, the people. Okay, and that would be all. Thank you, and good day, everyone.
Thank you so much, Doc Leo, for your presentation. I hope you can stay for a while until the last sharer, Dr. Mercy, for our open forum and Q&A. Thank you so much. At this point, let me share this certificate of appreciation. Philippine Christian University Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Dr. Leo Andrew B. Biclar for his invaluable insights as resource speaker during the webinar discourse session on demystifying graduate research output given this second day of May 2021, Manila, Philippines. Signed, Dr. Junifen Guanan, President. Thank you so much, Dr. Leo. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, Doc.
So we shall have our next topic lecture on medical research.
Good day and welcome to this PCU webinar series about demystifying graduate research output. And my topic is about medical research. So let me just start by saying that there's such a thing as the FREB, or the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board. It is the main policy-making body on health research ethics on humans in the Philippines. These are the responsibilities or duties of the FREB, or the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board. So it is concerned with the formulation of guidelines on ethical conduct of human health research. and it coordinates with other government agencies, such as, for example, we have the Department of Health's National Ethics Committee. So this was reactivated by then Health Secretary Dr. Alberto G. Romualdez, and it is concerned with agencies that fund the researches conducted in each government institutions. So to start mainly, so the FREB on 2017 launched the National Ethical Guidelines for Health and Health-Related Research. So we have these National Ethical Guidelines for Health and Health-Related Research, year 2017. And it was prepared by the ad hoc committee for updating the National Ethical Guidelines. So on its first few pages, the National Ethical Guidelines will talk about or talks about the elements of research ethics, the social value, informed consent, vulnerability of research participants, risks, safety, benefits, privacy and confidentiality, justice and transparency, and the subsequent part. By the way, this is about 100 pages guidelines. We are only taking up a few, and then it also takes up the ensuring quality research. So you have the particular topics there. But for this presentation, I'm going to take up only the social value, informed consent, vulnerability of the participants, the risks, benefits, and safety concerns, privacy, confidentiality, justice, and transparency. So let's take up the social value as the first element of the research ethics as set forth by the National Ethics Guidelines of the 2017. So it says here that the participation of human beings in research can only be justified if the research has a social value. So if one is going to propose a research, then a question must be asked, what is its social value? How does it help the community? So that is one aspect of the elements of research. What is the relevance of the studies? Their particular existing health problem. So right now we have a pandemic. So if one's going to propose a research or study, then what would be its social value? Then the second element is the informed consent. This is the very core of the National Ethics Guidelines. And all the discussions in that guideline revolves around informed consent. So it says here that informed consent is deals with the decision of a competent potential participant. So in other words, there are elements to satisfy an informed consent. Okay, so briefly, we have the volume or the quantum of information that is going to be provided to the participant. What's the purpose of the research? What are the benefits and risks? What are the alternatives? Is there insurance? Is there a funding? Is there a source of fund? What are those sources? Then we have the comprehension. So what is the education of the educational level of the participant? What language or dialect does he speak? If he cannot understand verbal communication, then you should do some sketches or show him or her some videos. And of course, we have the aspect of voluntariness. Was he given the opportunity to ask question? Because he should not be subject to coercion or undue influence or inducement. Okay, so another aspect of informed consent, again, it is mentioned here, the voluntariness aspect of the participant. And if the participant is not capable of giving his or her consent because of physical or mental incapacity, at least the researcher must obtain his or her assent. But still, there should be a legal guardian who is going to give the consent. And he is what you call the LAR, or the legally authorized representative. And it is mentioned here also that sponsors and researchers shall have the duty to avoid deception or undue influence or intimidation. This is very important because there are instances previously where the pharmaceutical sponsor of the research, so they sequestered the negative findings of their phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials. They did not reveal that there were deaths, that there were physical injuries during this phase 1, phase 2 trial of their clinical trials. Further, with informed consent, the participant must know the name of the researcher. The researcher is often called the principal investigator in clinical trials. He must also be informed of the venue or the institution where the research or study is going to be done. And of course, the participant must be free to refuse or to withdraw during the trial or research study without any penalty or loss of benefits that were contained in the agreement. Again, further, the purpose of the research, again, you will go back to the social value. Explain to the participant how the research differs from the routine medical or health care. Why? Because mostly in clinical trials or research, the participants are normal humans, normal people. Unlike in routine medical health care, they are usually the sick. But of course, there are studies which involve also the sick, like in cancer patients. There are clinical trials that the participants are also infirmed or sick. The duration of the research study or the trial, the participant must know. Okay, so the possibility that if early on there are negative results, then there's a possibility that the study will be terminated. And of course, if it is terminated, then there will be a termination also of the participation of the subjects. And then, of course, the usual information that is required to be provided to the participants, the risks, the pain, benefits, inconvenience, even to the spouse or partner in both the control and the experimental group. All right, so the direct benefits, if any, that the participant must be receiving, whether there are money or other forms of material goods, then the participant must know. Of course, again, going back to the social value, it must be explained to the participant the expected benefits of the society at large and the contribution to scientific knowledge. Again, is there any expectation of material benefit like money or payment? I think the participant must also know according to the ethics guidelines. And of course, a very important aspect is that the participant must be guaranteed of the privacy of the research study, the confidentiality of the records, which is really an element of the research ethics, that the participant must be informed that the research study might be displayed in publications or might be discussed in conferences or fora. All right, so again, it says here that the participants are free to withdraw from the clinical trial or research at any time, even without having to give any reason and without penalty and without any loss of benefits to which he or she is entitled. The sponsors or funders of the research study, the institutional affiliations, these are the hospitals like the Research Institute of Tropical Medicine. The big hospitals, they are always engaged in research. Okay, so the nature or sources of the funding must be provided to the participant. The possible usage of the research study, again going back to the social value. Then we also have a possible future use of the biological specimens. Example is when there are extractions of blood, there are extractions of fluid from the brain, the cerebrospinal fluids. So the participant must know whether these specimens will be destroyed, where, how, and how long are they going to be stored, if they will be stored or kept indefinitely. And then the right to decide about the future use or continued storage of these specimens or their personal information. And we also have a requirement that the participant must be provided free of charge of any cost for any research-related injury or for any complications associated with the research, so that the participant must be prepared if ever there is an injury, either it is expected or not expected. Now, we have the requirement of documentation. So as a general rule, meaning the documentation of the consent. The general rule is that it must be written. It must be signed. And if there's necessity, then there must be a thumb mark of the participant on the informed consent form. So There's also a requirement that there shall be a description of the process which is attested and signed by the witnesses. Okay, so and there must be approval by the Research Ethics Committee. There's also a possibility of a waiver of the consent, but this must not be the rule, but rather it must only be the exceptional, and there must be a tacit approval by the Research Ethics Committee. Now, what are the cases in which the informed consent may be waived? So we have the archival research, or the research that uses naturalistic observation, often described as the covert method. But in this case, naturalistic observation, there are requirements to be satisfied also. The archival research, an example of this is that a review of previous medical charts or records of patients that are already available in the uh, in the record section of every hospitals. Now, these are the elements in the or the things in the informed consent which may be waived or what we call altered, but with the approval of the Research Ethics Committee. So, if the research presents no more than a minimal risk. So, as we have said, the review of the medical charts or the medical records of the patient, in that case, there is no more than minimal risk. The risk there are the revelation of the identities. They may be disclosed, the identities of the patients. Like, for example, in review of charge of HIV patients. So the researcher must be very careful that the identities of these patients must not be disclosed. Or the waiver or alteration will not adversely affect the rights and welfare of the participants. So again, going back to the HIV, okay, if an identity of the patient is revealed, then there is that stigma associated with the identity of the patient. Or if the research cannot practically be carried out without the waiver. A very typical example of this is in this present pandemic. So if you get the consent of all the participants, they might refuse because they don't want themselves to be stigmatized to be a positive COVID patient. Otherwise, they will be avoided in public. Or if the participants will be provided with additional pertinent information after their participation. Again, there is also such thing as renewing consent. So at any time during the research, there could be some changes in the consent because, for example, the participant wants something or does not want something anymore. For example, the dosages of the research medicine. If you try to increase, then there's another consent for that if you increase the dosage of the research medicine. Okay, we go to the next element, which is the consideration of the vulnerability of the research participants. So vulnerability, like for example, as to age, okay, and then because of their tender age, they cannot provide or understand completely the research study. You also have the other end, which is the elderly, who are emotionally or mentally reduced in their capacity to make decisions or understand or comprehend the research study. So physical, emotional, and mental disabilities, or those who live in poverty because they want money, or those who are placed in asymmetric power relations, like uh, here is a employer volunteering his employees, or the kasambais, for example. Then we have the marginalization. Of course, this includes the poverty group, and among others who are placed at greater risk for some harms. So these are the vulnerable participants. So vulnerable groups shall not be included in research unless such research are necessary to promote the welfare of the population represented. So, for example, in a squatter area, there's a particular disease that is suffered by the population in that area. So there must be a research study to be done. So therefore, the vulnerable groups are included in this research. Or if the research itself cannot be performed on the non-vulnerable groups. So for example, if it is a study for a particular disease, the sick people are really vulnerable already, but it is to their own benefit, the vulnerable people, that this research must include them. We have discriminatory guidelines, for example, that the research shall not arbitrarily exclude women of reproductive age. The potential for becoming pregnant shall not in itself be used as a reason to exclude or limit the women's participation in research. Of course, there are exceptions like research drugs or medicines that may endanger the potential fetus. Then these are the exceptions. So there must be competent advice and assistance to be provided to these vulnerable participants by virtue of social, economic, political, and medical disadvantages. Now we go to the risks, benefits, and safety. As I've mentioned, this is the usual information that is required to be provided to the research participants. So we have the predictable risks and burdens and foreseeable benefits. Then they must, the researcher must convey these to the participant. There are unpredictable risks, of course, and this must also be conveyed to the participant. Of course, you do not know those unpredictable risks, but nonetheless, the researcher must tell the participant that there might be some still unpredictable risks. Then we have the benefit risk ratio. So in conducting a research, if ever there is a benefit, there are benefits and risk, the benefits must be greater substantially than the risk. Otherwise, the researcher must not proceed with the research. So the researcher, together with the funders and the sponsors, shall ensure the reasonable availability and accessibility of research outcomes to the community. In other words, there is a requirement that the outcome of the research, either if it is good or bad, there must be, or the researcher must publish it for the benefit of the community. So they should not hide the negative outcome of the research. So again, the next element is privacy and confidentiality of information. So here, uh, it's mentioned already, transparency. Okay, so again, the legitimate purpose going to the of the research, going back to the social value, the proportionality in the collection, retention, and processing of personal information pursuant to the Data Privacy Act of 2012. Again, there must always be a respect to the participants' right to privacy. Then we have the privileged communication between the researcher and the participant. There's such thing, for example, the rules of court, that the physician-patient relationship, the doctor or the researcher cannot be compelled to testify with respect to any information gathered in connection with the treatment or research study. Again, researchers shall refrain from identifying individuals or groups who are participants during the release of information, because exposing them could possibly create possible harm or what we call a social stigma, like COVID groups and the HIV participants. So there are, for example, requirements for the participant to observe the occurrence of illegal or harmful behaviors, like child abuse, drug addiction or substance use, suicide. Okay, so there are requirements for the researcher, for example, to indicate the limits of confidentiality in the informed consent, as mentioned immediately in the preceding paragraph: child abuse, substance use, and the others. And then emphasize the right of the respondent to withdraw, okay, or withdraw his or her data, okay, or refuse to answer any question. And the concrete and realistic protocol for reporting. So there are strict guidelines for reporting, especially in a possible event of imminent harm or criminal act, okay, which could be disclosed or discovered in the process of data collection, like convicts who want to participate in the study. Then this information must be safeguarded. Okay, so going on further with privacy and confidentiality of information. So researchers or principal investigators shall recognize that collecting data using group methods, okay, has implications of data privacy and confidentiality of individuals. Again, the data privacy law must always be complied with. Now we go to the elements of justice. It says here, so in research involving human participants, the justice, the principle of justice refers to primarily to distributive justice. The justice, the word justice here does not refer to the practice of law, but it refers to the principles of bioethical principles called justice. So it requires the equitable distribution of both the burdens and benefits of participation in research. So, for example, there is this the experimental drug and the placebo. So, who should receive the experimental drug? Who should receive the placebo? So, this is an issue of justice, distributive justice. Further, with justice, so there are the rules. The rules are there shall be fair selection in the choice of population, sampling, and assignments. There shall be provision of appropriate care to research participants regardless of their economic status, gender, race, or creed. There shall be just compensation for harms brought about by participation in the research. And research participants shall be reimbursed for lost earnings. Okay, so their travel expenses and other expenses related to the research study. And of course, another important one is the community who should benefit from the research study must have access to the outcomes of the research, especially if it is beneficial to the community. Transparency. Again, everything must be disclosed to the participant. This refers to the conflict of interest of the researcher, the funder, or the members of the research ethics committee, and the institution. Transparency is not diametrically opposed to privacy, but still it is a principle because of conflict of interest. Then researchers must be transparent about aspects of the study that may have impact on the rights, the health, the safety of participants, and in respect to information that may have a bearing on the decision of the participants to give or withhold their consent. So again, you go back to the elements of informed consent. All right, so these are further the requirements in disclosing the disclosure and conflict of interest. So the following principles apply. So the findings are scientifically valid and confirmed. The findings have significant implications for the participants' well-being, and the course of action to ameliorate these concerns is readily available. But of course, there should also be the social value aspects with the requirement of transparency. Okay, so there are responsibilities on the part of researchers to disclose information about, again, conflict of interest, okay? The affiliations, financial interest, loyalties that may affect or influence the outcome of the research study. If you remember this doctor, he is called the angel of death, no other than Dr. Joseph Mengele during the Holocaust, where he experimented on humans, the Jews, millions of them. And this is the reason why there's the Declaration of Helsinki. It says that the declaration is morally binding on physicians, who are the researchers, and that the obligation overrides any national or local laws or regulations if the declaration provides for a higher standard of protection of humans than the latter. Investigators still have to abide by local legislation, but will be held to the higher standard, which is required by the Declaration of Helsinki. In other words, no amount of legislation by any country shall overrule the principles of human rights as set forth in the Declaration of Helsinki with respect to human research. And for that, I thank you very much and I end my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bu, for that presentation. May we request Dr. Bu, we will award this Certificate of Appreciation. Philippine Christian University Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Attorney Bu Castro for his invaluable insights as resource speaker during the webinar discourse session on demystifying graduate research output given this second day of May 2021, Manila, Philippines. Signed, Junifen Guanan, Dr. Guanan, President, PCU. Thank you so much, Dr. Bu.
Thank you also, Dr. Ma. Thank you to
Yeah,
President.
I hope you can stay for a while for our open forum and Q&A.
I can stay only up to 12 o'clock midnight.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you
again
too.
from again from the rigors of action research, no? Looking at the meaning of phenomena, no? Presented by Dr. Leo, and now we had the exposure to elements of research ethics by Dr. Bu. So we thank you so much, no, for our two speakers this afternoon. So from here, we shall proceed to the next speaker, Dr. Mercy Handayan Labial, on her sharing on communicating research output. Good afternoon, Dr. Mercy.
Good afternoon, Dr. Matt. Good afternoon to the President of Philippine Christian University, Dr. Gawanan, and to the rest of the administrators of PCU, and of course the participants, and to my co-presenters this afternoon. A pleasant afternoon from the city of Golden Friendship, Cagayan de Oro City, where Doc Matt is coming from. So I am glad to be here and to share with you my topic. Before that, let me just share my screen. Doc Matt, how is my slide
Perfect.
coming?
Perfect.
Great. So yes, good afternoon, and I am very glad to be part of this webinar series that PCU puts up, titled Demystifying Graduate Research Output. So I am tasked to have the topic communicating and utilizing research findings. Now I have 6 points for you, the 5 W's and 1 H. This will be the things that I will be talking about in 30 minutes. So let's get started. Let me begin with the first W, which is the what. So granting that you have already written your thesis, and so you have done an extensive research about the problems that you have established. You have identified statistical tools which are suitable for your kind of research. You have the data, you have analyzed the data. In other words, you have completed your chapters 1 to 5. Now what? What are you gonna do next when you have already submitted your paper? Of course, you have your research results or your research findings, which you should not be setting aside because these are potent material information that can effect changes. So you should do something about that. And of course, the rigors that you went through, you spent sleepless nights in researching, and you even sacrificed your holidays just so you can complete your paper, your thesis, with the end goal of generating sound scientific knowledge. Now you have already generated, you have a sound scientific knowledge now. You cannot just set them aside, put them, shelve them. You need to disseminate findings for evidence-based practice. Okay, so that is the meat actually of our talk this afternoon, my talk this afternoon, which is communicating and utilizing research findings. Now comes the who in communicating and utilizing research findings. So who will communicate? Who does the communicating of research findings? Of course, the one who did the research or the researcher is the one who is tasked to communicate first and foremost. Okay, so the researcher does the communicating of research findings. To whom will you communicate research findings? Of course, you will communicate research findings to policymakers. If you want to effect change, if you want to change something, or if there is a change that must be done in your setting, and then you're researching for that, then you present your research results to policymakers, because these are the key people who will do the change, or who will make policies. Also, you have the stakeholders. You will be presenting, or you will be communicating your research findings to stakeholders. This could be people from the government, organizations, to NGOs, who will make sense, or who will make meaning out of the findings that you have. So these are the people who will be your audience as you communicate your research findings. Next up is the when. So when will I communicate my research findings? Now, granting that you have already you have already completed your thesis, you need to communicate your findings as soon as possible. Time is of the essence here, because while you are completing, while you are submitting your paper to your panel, to your committee, there are researches coming up, and you need to have urgency in communicating your research findings, in order that you will contribute to the body of knowledge, so that your results or your findings will not become moot and academic, meaning it has freshness. Okay, so as to the question on when should I communicate, it should be done immediately or as soon as possible. Next up is where. So where will I communicate, or where will I utilize research findings? So there are, I split the where factor here into two, in presentations and in writing. So in presentations, in conferences, you have the online also, and you have the face-to-face presentation. Now that we are in the new normal, so the online presentation is commonplace, but it used to be that we really have to be in a conference room or be in a summit venue for us to present papers. Okay, but now we have online presentations, and also in journals, in conference papers, in books. So that's where you will be presenting or communicating your research findings. Let me just get this in the way. Hold on a second. All right, so we go back to that. Hold on, Matt. All right, so how do I, so we come now to the how do I communicate my research findings? There are two ways in communicating research findings. One is the oral, so you communicate it orally and in written form. So let me begin with the oral presentation of or communication of research findings. So pre-pandemic, I mentioned earlier that presentation in conferences uh, was a commonplace, but now that we are in pandemic time, so we can have online or something like this, like a webinar. But there are strategies for communicating research findings orally, and these are, aside from what I mentioned, the research conferences, we have also paper presentation, poster presentation, which you might be very familiar with. So just to give you a look of it, so you have this, no? You will be seeing poster presentations, and poster presentations are done with these elements. So we include the following when we do poster presentation. We have the problem statement, the hypotheses, the distribution of sample, the methods, findings, and conclusion. And you will be seeing diagrams, graphs, and tables in presenting the findings. So that's for the poster presentation. You can also have, for those who are in the medical field, you can have clinical practice conferences and meetings where you can communicate research findings. We have videotaped and audio tape presentations from conferences and meetings. And now that we are in a technologically advanced setting, we can also have podcasts. We have in-service education programs where you can, which can be used as your avenue for communicating research findings, professional conferences and meetings, and interdisciplinary team meetings. So these are the strategies for communicating your research findings. Now, we communicate research findings with the thought that these findings can be utilized by a group, by certain groups, no, or organizations. Again, let me use what Dr. Boo mentioned, the social value of your research. So that's you are presenting your research findings for the social value to find its place in your research. All right, going back, so we're done with the oral way of communicating research findings. Next up is the written form of communicating research findings. So, of course, your theses and your dissertations are strategies or are means in which you can communicate your research findings. Okay, and let's just have a recall that when you have a thesis that that focuses on the examination or testing of existing theories, and higher level would be the dissertation, wherein you are now refining a certain theory, or you might generate a new theory for the dissertation. Okay, so another way in which you can communicate your research findings in written form would be the research publication in professional journals. So there are two types of journals. You have the refereed journals and the non-refereed journals. So what's the difference? When you have the refereed journals, subject experts evaluate manuscript. No? So you have the peer review. And for non-refereed journals, these are editorial staff reviewing the manuscript. So it's the first one, the refereed journals, which are the more stringent, no? As compared to non-refereed journals. Moving on, so you have a list here. I have screen caps of images of journals which can be used, or which can be your avenue when you are presenting or communicating your research findings. Depending on what field you are in, you can choose, like, are you on the sciences? Are you on education, business, or engineering, psychology, medicine, all right, or management, environment, depending on on which field you belong to, you can choose which journal to publish or to communicate your research findings. But of course, um, communicating your research findings and going into certain journals or publishing your work in certain journals can not be an easy thing to do. It can be challenging at times because they also have their uh, processes or procedures to follow. Okay, so there you have them. Okay. So you might ask, so how do we publish a journal article? So we have traditional journals or online journals. So ethical integrity is essential to writing and publications. This was mentioned by Dr. Bu also. Readers want assurance that information and knowledge are accurate and trustworthy. Okay, so these are the contents, no, of your journal article. So your journal article contains introduction, review of literature, methods, findings and discussion, style and format varies between journals. You have to remember that. So you cannot just say that this is true in one, this can be true in another. No, they have different styles and formats, and you just have to pick up a journal, a target journal, which is suitable for the kind of field that you are in. And um, of course you need to know the reputation of that particular journal. Okay, going back, so you have research publications in books, so you can use your research findings in book chapters. That's one way. Another is you can have research newsletter as an avenue where you can communicate your research findings on the net, newspaper, news and popular magazines, electronic databases, and the written reports. This is your means in communicating your research findings. Let me click on that. So research report is a written or oral summary of a study. Research report should contain 4 sections: the introduction, method, results, discussion, or the MRED. Okay. And introduction chapter should contain research problem, significance of the problem, the context in which the problem is selected to study. And the method section of the research report should contain detailed description of the research methods, while the results section should contain statistical analyses summarized in tables and graphs. Now, just a note on the use of tables and graphs. Your tables and graphs must be suitable also for the kind of data that you are giving. So there must be a careful selection of graphs to use if you need to use graphs, and your statistician can help you on that. Okay. And the discussion section should contain main findings, interpretation, evidences to support the findings, justification of the findings, comparison of results with prior knowledge on the topic, conclusion, implications, and recommendations. Now, it is in this discussion section where you will find the need to have a good writing skill. No? So you really have to brush up on your grammar when you go into discussion. In the interpretation of your results, no? In chapter 4 of your thesis, things must be communicated, not just simply communicating it, but it has to be communicated in an accurate, precise, no, and proficient way. It should be free of grammar errors. Your construction, no, your sentence structures must be complex, must be professional, and anyway, your research teacher will must have taught you how to go about it. So as you present, as you communicate the result of your research, also your English, your grammar must be correct, of course, and the data that you are giving must be precise or accurate. Okay, so these are the characteristics of a research report. It has to be concise, it has to be clear, honest, no? Complete, and accurate. Let me just hinge on honesty. Let me just take off from what Dr. Boo said, that if ever you're working on a research and medical, you don't leave out those which are negative or which are putting a certain company in a bad light. So if it's, in other words, whatever is given by the data, that should be written as it is. We do not distort, we do not change uh, in favor of whoever is funding the research. All right, so it should be complete, accurate. So concise, clear, honest, complete, accurate. These are the characteristics of a written or a research report. Okay, so these are the strategies for the written form in communicating research findings. Going back, there are two ways of communicating research: oral and written. Okay, so we're done with the how. We go now to the why. Why do we need to communicate research? Or why do we need to utilize research? Okay, so there are there are some reasons why people communicate research findings. So one could be for other researchers to critique, okay, or to do a critique. Now, this can be, sometimes this can be disheartening to some people. Oh, I spent so much time working on this. It was so challenging. It was tormenting for some to come up with a study or to come up with a thesis. And now comes this person critiquing my work. So sometimes people are not welcoming that idea of critiquing. But if we are receptive enough, that is a productive actually gesture of welcoming other researchers to critique our work for, for improvement, for development. Okay, so it's a matter of attitude actually. For utilization, of course, we communicate research findings for utilization. We use it to improve a certain practice, to make a change in a procedure that we have been doing for quite a while, or like for the medical field, we do research to discover a certain drug for a particular disease, maybe, or the efficacy of a certain drug uh, will be measured for whatever purpose. Okay. So we also have the reason of communicating research findings to replicate or develop similar studies. So if there is a research done, particularly in Pampanga, and we have a similar setting in Cagayan de Oro, then we can replicate that in Cagayan de Oro and see what happens and see what data we will be gathering. Others communicate research findings for recognition, others for advancement, and others also do communicate research findings for financial compensation. I know of some universities which are giving financial compensation for those teachers or for those educators who are going into research. So that's a motivating factor for some why they are communicating, or why in the first place they are engaging into research. Of course, for contribution, incorporation into the body of knowledge. I like this one. Uh, this should be heavily noted. No, that we communicate research findings for us to contribute or to incorporate into the body of knowledge, for theory, for practice, for the changes that need to be made, or for further studies. So these are the reasons why we engage in research. Now, these are the notes that we have to consider on communicating research findings. I mentioned about the how, the oral and the written. So you pick a medium you are comfortable with. So if you're comfortable with the oral way of communicating research, go ahead. If you are more comfortable with the written form, because probably your passion is into writing, then that's your track. Okay. Or if you are like the millennials, no, who are fond of using the social media or the technologies, then probably you can go into having your research findings communicated through podcast maybe, or in webinars, no? Tailor messages to go beyond colleagues. So when we communicate our research findings, especially if it is an interdisciplinary gathering, gathering of people with having interdisciplinary backgrounds. So we do not only speak in a language which we are using as a group. In other words, we avoid jargon. We have to speak in a level which will be understandable, or which can be understood by people of different backgrounds. Okay? And as we communicate research, I mentioned earlier about being receptive. As we communicate our research findings, we should not have that defensive stance. Like, I will be defending, I worked so hard for this. So I don't want anyone to be questioning me on this because I really spent like my life here, my whole life for this paper. So have a welcoming attitude, like a receptive attitude of having this research findings, what's next, or things can be improved, things can be done better, or things can be done in another way, no, with my research. Okay. And then, of course, tailor your presentation to your audience. If you are presenting to students, then you know the level of language, or you know the level of examples that you will give, because these are students. Or if you're talking to a certain group of professionals, you know well what to do with them, because you know their background. So again, tailor to your audience. So with that, I'd say contribute to the body of knowledge, utilize your research findings, be a game changer, be part of research. With that, thank you very much for having me here. And yes, we covered the 5 Ws and 1 H in communicating and utilizing research findings. Thank you very much, Dr. Matt.
Thank you so much, Doc Mercy, for that. I guess that was really indeed a comprehensive presentation on how we can utilize, how we can communicate our research outputs. So I think our audience, our students here, would look into that, no, as they face the next semester on presenting their research output respectively. At this juncture, Dr. Mercy, Philippine Christian University, would like to award and present the Certificate of Appreciation to you, Dr. Marcelita Handayan Labial, for your invaluable insights as a resource speaker during this webinar discourse session on demystifying graduate research output, given this second day of May 2021, Manila, Philippines. Signed, Dr. Junifen F. Buanan, President. Thank you so much, Dr. Mercy.
Thank you very much, Doc Matt, and thank you very much, PCU.
Thank you so much. So at this point, I think we had an awesome afternoon. We started with looking at action research, and then we went into the five, I think we had 7 elements of research ethics, no, by Dr. Bu. And then we ended up, again, that was the great ending for these sessions of series of webinars, no, We had session 1, 2, and now we had the 3. We ended up with a bang with Dr. Mercy's uh, presentation on, after all, how can we utilize, no, our output and through communication. So with this, we are open to some of students' query or question or observation. Our research speakers are here to share further some of our questions. So thank you. Can we have the audience now? Let me stop the sharing, so I can. Okay, you can just click on the reaction and raise hand to be recognized. Oh, so I guess one thing is sure, no? Everything is clear as far as the speaker's lecture and sharing this afternoon. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Parang lahat thank you ang nasulat nila sa kanilang chat box, no? Doc Leo, parang ang sarap lang kasi ng hapon, no? Parang klaro lahat ang sharing ng mga ating mga resource speakers. So I have 5 slides here. No one is raising his or her hand. So with that,
Doc Matt, may question po yata kay Stephen po.
Let me check. Okay, hold on. I don't see the hand. Stephen.
Basahin ko na lang. Andito po sa message, Doc.
Is it in the group?
Sa chat box.
Chat box. Sorry. Stephen, Dr. Stephen Lee. Sir, where can we ask help for statistical or statistics analysis for our possible methodology? Okay. So, yeah, we will discuss that one later. Every time that we end our webinar, we have some sort of a consultation on other matters regarding how we can go about or the process of doing our research. But at this point, I have introduced Dr. Mercy. Dr. Mercy is based in Cagayan de Oro City, and he is a proprietor, a CEO of MJL, no? Services and consultancy. So Dr. Mercy is willing to help us, no, on towards the end, no, when we conceptualize our thesis and dissertation. So that's her expertise. So we talk, and then she expressed commitment, no, to help students, and then I can give the PM, no, or contact, no, for Dr. Mercy on that. Yes, Ariel?
Thank you po, Doc. Tatanong na lang din po ako. Yung question ko po para kay Doc Mercy po. Salamat po for sharing. Napakaganda po nung na-present niyo po sa amin. However, pag nagpe-present po ako ng lesson po actually sa mga students or nagkakandak po ako ng mga survey, minsan po para sa akin, helpful gumamit ng jargons. But you mentioned we need to avoid this one po. Hindi ko lang po na-catch yung kanina po. Sorry, naglalag po.
All right.
I'd like to be
Sir
enlightened.
Ariel, yes.
Thank you po.
Can I answer your question now, Sir Ariel?
Go ahead, Dr. Mercy.
Yes.
Yes po.
Yes, I said we avoid jargon. Yes, that's true. If you are talking to your students who are familiar with the language that you are speaking in your particular circle, then it's okay. I mean, you can use jargon because you understand one another because that's your language. However, in what I was saying is if you are in a big gathering like conferences when people are coming from different backgrounds, we cannot really ascertain that these people are understanding the jargon that we are using. So therefore, we refrain from using it. Or if we need to, because it's really something like a medical term or what, we then follow it up with a layman's term, like kind of an explanation of it. So that's how it is, Sir Ariel. Did I
That's
answer
po.
your question, sir?
Yes po. Thank you po, Doc Mercy.
Thank you,
Salamat.
Dr. C. This one from Archie. How wide will be the scope of informed consent if we are to do participatory action research? Maybe Dr. Leo can share and Attorney Boo. Okay, how wide will be the scope of informed consent if we are to do participatory action research?
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Boo here.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Boo.
I have to ask first to clarify what kind of research. Is it a minimal risk research or is it a invasive research like the vaccines?
Archie Ramos, can we?
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
Actually, it's for the if we're going to conduct a participatory action research, I was just wondering if ha kung sino-sino yung mga kailangan kunan ng consent. So, kanina po kasi dun sa presentation ni Dr. Biclar, so you already have a subject community where you will where you will conduct your research and observe them and immerse with them. So that's one. However, if you're going to do the whole project itself, um, would the other agencies be uh, some sort of should we get consent from the other agencies that it is actually an ongoing study that you are conducting?
Yeah,
Okay.
Dr. Leo, I think you're being asked.
Yes, Attorney Doc. Thank you. Thank you, Sir Archie, for that question. In terms of our participants, since it's in the indigenous people, so there is a process that we have to observe from the NCIP or the National Commission for Indigenous Peoples. You have to follow this FPIC or the precondition consent in which you will be presenting to them the whole project, the objectives, the outcomes, and so on, and then they have to meet up. There will be a time that they have to meet up, and then consider they would talk with each other and consider all those things that are included in the project, and then they will lay down at to what extent are they going to share the data with you as a researcher. So they are the one to decide whether they want to share this kind of data, especially if it's in the culture, it's in the practices. Then there are some that they would limit, no, limit the information. But in some cases they would agree naman, and that would be part of the memorandum of agreement that you have with the community. Kasi yung with the, like for example in these indigenous peoples, they have the council of elders who would sign in the memorandum of agreement as to what extent they will be sharing with the data. And then that would be again signed by you as a researcher, and then you have to go over if sapat na ba yung data na ibibigay nila. And also with the other agencies, for example, informed consent would be not necessarily, but you have to establish a memorandum of agreement with them on how they would act as the key player for the action that you will be doing with the community. So in my case, that those are the practices that we had in our university in doing this or in the execution of this informed consent form.
In my case, Dr. Matt,
Yes,
if
Dr.
this is a medical research, uh, uh, this is a case of minimal risk. In other words, it is not invasive. You don't physically touch the participant, but still they are vulnerable because they are minors, and there's need for their assent and the consent of their legally legal guardians like the parents. Now, the only safeguard in case of the minimal risk is uh, their identities should be kept. In other words, there's no way that you will place something there that they are going to be later on be identified. So you don't place, for example, initial of the names or
Oh,
exact address or the
yeah.
phone numbers. Then you don't place
Oh,
them, even though you don't get their consent.
yeah.
This is just kind, for example, of a review of something retrospectively. So the only safeguard you have to place there are their possible disclosure of identities. Over.
Thank you so much.
Ah,
Thank you so much,
thank you
Dr.
po.
Bu. Let me add on that to Dr. Mercy. Dr. Mercy, is it in presenting our findings in constructing our research, would there be permissible, right? A dummy, something like that, in terms of confidentiality of, would that be in the methodology? You're mute.
Sorry. In terms of what do you call this? Communicating your research findings, the understanding there is it's already the paper is already clean. The paper is already done. I mean, it has gone through the institutional review board and everything is done. So when you communicate your output, that means that's already approved by your committee or your panel. So that's already clear.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the understanding there. I do not know with some universities, or I do not know yet with PCU, but uh, most universities really they have their like the institutional review board, no, so which will like in our university you cannot uh, push through, or you cannot proceed with the gathering of your data. I mean, after the proposal, you have chapters 1 to 3, right? So after the proposal, so you
Don't
cannot
run.
proceed
What's
with the
that?
next level or the gathering of your data if you are not cleared, if you are not given permission by the institutional review board.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you on that.
Mm.
Doc Matt,
Yes. Yes, Doc Leo.
I think in the disclosure of the identity,
Okay.
social sciences, for example, it's part of the inclusion. It's part of the informed consent form. Whether they would agree to disclose their identity as the respondent or participant, then it's okay. But if there's no agreement on that matter, then you cannot disclose the identity. Maybe you can just label or make some codes on the identity of participants.
Okay. Thank you. La. I think that's both no statements clear. Okay. Thank you on that. I think we have two last here from Dr. Michael. If a researcher doesn't follow ethical research practice, what can he or she be charged with? Can he or she be imprisoned? I think Dr. Bu.
I don't know what kind of violation uh, it is being mentioned, but not complying with the conditions of the ethical of the clinical trial, for example, is a ground for their termination, and may be a waiver or waiving their benefits if they have actively violated the conditions of the terms of the agreement in participating in the research or clinical trial. So, but I don't know any criminal violation there unless it is a criminal act, like attempting to commit murder. in the course of the criminal clinical trial.
Okay, thank you. Next, was there an instance where the findings of the study are not acceptable by the community or organization that you are working with? If there is any, how did you go about it? I think this question is pertaining to you have to give what the data has shown you. So,
Who's going to answer? This is very common now in the pandemic.
mhm.
If you're very observant, several data are coming out about medicines, vaccines, and so many opinions are being are being thrown out in the public. Like the ivermectin, we have the Sinovac, we have. By the way, I'm a member of. Just to disclose, I'm a member of the HTAC, the Health Technology Assessment Council, which determines the safety, efficacy of vaccines, of medicines, the burden of disease, the social burden, whether it is going to be purchased with the government, what is the effect on the individual's financial status. That is our responsibilities in the HTAC. So you will see our output when the Secretary of Health releases our output. So that's it. So as I was saying, for example, there are data on ivermectin, and there are data on Sinovac, Galamea. So what is the official source that you're going to consider in these many sources of data? So these are the ethical dilemma again. Even the community of doctors, they are divided when it comes to ivermectin, for example. One is having a press conference in favor, one is having a press conference against it. But they are not the official sources, you see. So this is confusing to the public. So
Thank
which one would you believe?
yeah. And I think okay. And to Dr. Mercy mentioned in her discussion, okay, I think this is the extreme scenario, no, for funded research, and then the data is showing the otherwise. So would that be accommodating to the benefactor, something like that?
Doc Matt, let me just share an experience. No, this is not about a medical background, but it's about education.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there was this research. I sat in one of the defenses. I sat there as a committee member, and then there was this result. No, there was this findings of the research, which really put the organization in bad light. Really, in because the result was it was grim. I would say, and if you really like verbatim in toto, if you really put the words there, it would really put the organization in bad light. So the question that I asked then was, first, in the like writing of the statement of the problem, remember in our chapter 1, no, in chapter 1, when we write, when we determine the problems that we would like to delve into, that should have been considered, that this could be, this can answers to these questions might put this certain organization or school in bad light. So that should have been considered by the panel. I mean, by the committee, beforehand, before the researcher completed the whole process. And so the result came, and it reached the final defense stage, and you cannot just say change that one because this is giving a bad reputation to this organization. So what we can do actually is, in the wording now, like, you should be using words. This is like a mitigating approach now, no, in the data that you have gathered. So you have to use words which will not be so unpleasant, no, for the for the data, which is which could be hurtful, no, to the people concerned. So kumbaga laro ng words na ngayon yan, but you do not, I mean, for me, ethically, you do not discount it because that's really what you gathered, no? So ngayon, what you will do now is talagang package mo na lang, no? I-ano mo sa words, no? So that it will protect both parties, the researcher and the consumer of the result of the research, like in that ano sa organization. That's my ano, that's my opinion. I don't know with Doc Declar.
I think you hit the point, no? So we go back to the question. So questions are very important because doing research, we already know what is our end point. No? So we have to, make sure that our research will have a good data, no, as what we would like to hypothesize or expect. Dr. Biclar, yes, would like to add? Okay.
I would like to say sana sir, whether it's a bad data or a good data, still it's part of the research. However, siguro
Yeah.
when we got the negative data, the negative implication or negative effect of the data that we gathered to the end user, no, maybe it would be coupled with recommendations on what action to be taken for that loophole, no, of the day of the implementer. Say for example, sir, we had this project with the ILG, the Citizen Satisfaction Index system, wherein we have to assess the availment, the awareness, the availment, and satisfaction of the community or the citizens with the government services. And we found out that the people were not aware of the services that the government have, especially on health, no, then they have not availed it. But during the utilization conference, the LGU, especially the concerned sector, the health, beg to disagree, no, with the data. So, however, still it's with the narration. It's coupled with the validation of the informant. So, yun po. What we have done is to recommend something in order for to address that kind of problem that rose during the utilization conference.
Yeah.
So, yun po.
So thank you so much, our presenter, our resource speakers, for sharing additional insights. So this is indeed an enabling afternoon for the researchers, no? Our students from Collab Group, no, to the PCU graduate school programs. So at this point, we go back. We identified some students to give us things that they have learned out of the sharing this afternoon. So we have to start with from the Master in Management, Major in Public Administration, AG Nuevo Galabit. AG?
Good afternoon, Doc. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, so here are the things that I have learned for our session this afternoon. Under the discussion of action research by Dr. Biklar, I have learned that a research is a contribution to human knowledge, while action is a thing to be done, accomplishment of the things, usually over a period of time. So by then, we define action research as a problem-based method of professional development undertaken by individual or small group, which involves systematic collection, analysis of data related to everyday practices. So there are two types of action research, participatory and community-based. So on a spiral of action research, it is consists of diagnosing, planning, taking action, evaluating action, and the spiral of action research continues until we will reach to sustainability. So for diagnosing, we conduct assessment, and that assessment involves analyzing problems, analyzing the effects, identifying problem, the core and the causes. Then we plan the action. No, we create system maps, which consist focal system, the subsystem, the macro systems, the mega systems, and the diplomatic organizations. And then also we, under the planning of action, we create the stakeholders analysis, where we identify positions in the issue, interested, affected by the issue, as well as the resources. Then after we plan the action, we take the action. When we take the action, we are identifying capability building initiatives, as well as technology transfer digital marketing strategies. And then we also, I also learned about the characteristic of a research design, which involves ethical commitment to improvement, cycle of reflective practice. It should be collaborative to work, and making work public for examination and critique. After the implementation of actions, then we have to evaluate it by doing, for example, focus group discussions, key informant interviews, or non-participant observation. Then we also learned about the ways in collecting data in action research. We can do it by self-assessment form, questionnaires, observation, checklist, and inventories. We also learned about the data analysis procedures, which involves interviewing informants, verbatim transcriptions, mapping of major concepts, coding based on the themes of objectives, assembling tables and charts assisted with cluster of codes, and describing the meaning of each code. Also, under the 6-phase framework of doing thematic analysis, we learned that we should become familiar with the data first, and then we have to generally initially do the codes, search for the themes, review themes, define themes, and then we do the write-up. And then in the part of the implementation plan, we create implementation plan, which consists objectives, the major activity, results, and success indicators, the person responsible's time frame, risk treatment, and the budgets. And then if we do the implementation plan, then we create communication plan also, which consists of the messages, for whom, the date, the medium of communication that we use, objective, and then by to whom we are sending the communication, as well as the budget. And then Dr. Biklar ended the session with quotes like, when you're a servant, measure your success with the number of lives you've helped become better, not with the number of documents you process or churn out. Do not forget that you are in the service because you want to make things better for your community. Do not forget that you're in the service because you want to help your countrymen. Do not forget that you're in the service because you want to make a difference in people's lives. And then do not forget that you're in the service because you want to help build a better nation. And then we have the medical research discussed by Attorney Busi Castro. He discussed about the FREB, or the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board, which was launched last 2017. On 2017, they launched the National Ethical Guidelines for Health and Related Research. FREB has many functions, and one of which is very important, is to formulate and update guidelines for the ethical conduct of human health research. And then I also learned about the elements of research ethics. That's social value, informed consent, and then vulnerability of research participants, the risk, benefits, and safety, the justice, and transparency. When we say social value, it is the participation of human beings in research can only be justified if the study has a social value. So it refers to the relevance of the study to an existing social or health problem, such that the results are expected to bring about a better understanding of related issues or contribute to promotion of well-being of individuals, their families, and communities. And then we have the informed consent. It is a decision of a competent potential participant to be involved in research after receiving and understanding relevant information without having been subjected to coercion, undue influence, or inducement. And then we have the vulnerability of research participants. So vulnerable participants shall require special protection because of certain characteristics or situations that render them as such. So we define the vulnerable participants are as those who are relatively or absolutely incapable of deciding for themselves whether or not to participate in a study for reasons such as physical, mental disabilities, poverty, asymmetric power relations, marginalization, among others, and who are greater risk for some harms. And then the risk, benefit, and safety. So the research should be justified if there is a reasonable likelihood that the population from which the participants are derived stand to benefit from the research. And then we have the privacy and confidentiality of information. So we researchers shall adhere to the principles of transparency, legitimate purpose, proportionality in the collection, retention, and processing of personal information under the Data Privacy Act of 2012. Then we have the justice. So in research involving human participants, the principle of justice refers primarily to distributive justice, which requires the equitable distribution of both the burdens and benefits of participation in the research. And last but not the least, the transparency. So we researchers must be transparent about aspects of the study that may have impact on the rights, health, and safety of participants, or in respect to information that may have bearing on the decision of participants to give or withhold their informed consent. And then the last discussion that we had is communicating and utilizing research funding by Dr. Labial. So to do this, we have to discuss about the what, who, when, where, how, and why. So when we say what, it is something producing a generate sound scientific knowledge. And then with who, we ask whose responsibility is it to communicate research findings, and to whom we will be able to we can communicate these research findings to policymakers and as well as the stakeholders. So when are we going to communicate the findings? So it has been discussed earlier that we should discuss the research findings as soon as possible. And to where we can discuss the research findings. So there are many examples where we can discuss the research findings. So we can communicate it in presentation, in conferences, or in writing. We can present it on a research poster. We can also present it through videotape and audio tape presentations from conference and meetings, podcast, which is very uso na po ngayon, in-service education programs, agency-based research committee and journal club, professional conferences and meetings in other disciplines, and interdisciplinarity meetings. So So I also learned about how to prepare preparing a research report. In a method section, it should contain detailed description of research methods. Results section should contain statistical analysis, summarize, and tables and graphs. And in discussion section, we should it should contain main findings, interpretation, findings, and inferences, evidences to support the finding, justification for the findings, comparison of results with prior knowledge on the topic, conclusion and implications, and recommendations. So when we do a research report, it should be concise, clear, honest, complete, and accurate. And then we have the why. So why why do we have to communicate research findings? So we have to communicate the research findings for other researchers to critique, for other to utilize, to replicate or develop similar studies, for recognition, for advancement, and for financial compensation. So when we communicate research findings, here are some of the reminders. We should pick a medium you are comfortable with. Video and social media will expand our reach. Tailor messages to go beyond colleagues. We should avoid jargon. Emphasize what's next. Going back to the jargon, I think it is implied that if your audience is familiar with your jargon, it's okay to use the jargon. But if your audience is a general audience, which is your audience is mixed, it is advised that we should not use our jargons. And then last but not the least, tailor to your audience. Thank you so much, Doc Matt. That would be all.
Welcome, AG. So next we shall call on Dr. Elvira Milo from Hospital Administration to give her synthesis and takeaways. Dr. Elvira.
Yung mic mo. Good afternoon, Dr. Matt. Good afternoon to our distinguished speakers. Congratulations. We have learned a lot from all of you, Dr. Biclar, Dr. Leo Biclar, to Dr. and our friend, Dr. Bu Castro, and to Dr. Marcelita Labial. So these are the points that I was able to capture for the lecture of Dr. Leo Biclar, that the action, at the start, I really didn't understand what action research is. He explained that this is what I surmised, that action research are the methodology of this research is generally applied to social sciences. Looking at what Dr. Leo showed us with the video, this kind of research is really a huge type of research that cannot be done by an individual alone. It has to be a collaborative. And we learned that there are so many, there's a need for so many papers that they have to do, because you cannot just do this task, especially this, for example, if the research is through like the ATIS that he has done. So you cannot just go there and do your research. There are challenges though that I got, that since this is really a huge work, there is a big burden to the researchers, and especially what Dr. Leo has done. They are limited with time, because as I understood, that when they're in the process of doing this action research, if there is something to be done, it has to be done at once. There should be an implementation of what you want to do. For example, what he said nga, there is a difficulty in the transporting of their products. They have to do it. They have to help these people as what he has done. Nag-online siya with friends, and they were able to help the artists. So how the tools that they were doing is a lot. Like for example, they really go to the place, live there, do observation. They can do audio and videos, and they can interpret what they see. They can take pictures, photography, and if it can be done, they can even do surveys. But as we see, the subjects of the artist is only grade 4. I don't think they will be able to answer surveys. And ang takeaway point sa akin with everything that was done from Dr. Biclar's dissertation or lecture is that if you are doing this kind of research, action research, first you have to have a heart to be able to do this, because if not, how can you be able to, because you sometimes you in doing the research you absorb what you see, you absorb what the people there are doing and feeling, and sometimes there is a possibility that you can develop fatigue in the process of doing it. So that for the lecture of Dr. Pilar, that is what I got. And from Dr. Bu Castro, this is close to our heart because we are doing a lot of this medical research with everything. And then with the height of the talk about ivermectin, Dr. Bu. So it boils down that in the process, in the studies that were done, there is still lack of data because there's a lot of things that you have to take in consideration. Can it be used for prophylaxis? Can it be used for asymptomatic positive and the likes? So there's really a huge and so many studies that has to be done first. For the social value, the informed consent. Informed consent is really very important. You cannot push through. Dr. Bucaso said that before before you can do the research, it has to be approved first by the ethical board. So tapos na yon. Everything that they want should be there. And it is very important that the informed consent should be well explained to the participants. If the participants cannot understand English, you have to translate it into Tagalog or what language that they can understand. And it is true that any time at all in the process of the study, the participant has the right to withdraw. And then if ever there will be a change, as in dosages and the likes, and for example, there will be side effects that can arise, there should be a re-informed consent. For the participants, especially children, there's an ethical rule on how consent for children is gathered. Like if it's 0 to 7, 7 to 9, may ano po yan may different age for the consent. And also for the extreme of age, if the participant for example, the study it is for them, for those, for example, patients with Alzheimer's. Of course, the participant should be patients with Alzheimer's. So who is responsible to give consent? The patient himself cannot give the consent. So there's a legal issue there. And of course, we always talk about the risk, benefit, and safety. Anytime at all, if the study has produced any bad effect or side effect, the participant can pull out. As Dr. Bu has also said, that the benefit must be always substantially greater than the risk. That is very important. Confidentiality is foremost. Anytime at all, the identity of the participant should not be known. And also the any form of like for example blood, urine, and the likes, the participant should be uh, well informed on what has to be done with those um, ang tawag dito, the urine or the blood. They have to know if it will be stored, because really in studies these are stored well in the laboratory of the hospital or institution. Uh, Dr. Bu also mentioned about justice, that remuneration should be given because of the loss of time. For example, the participant in the middle of the study decide to back out or get out of the study, he should be remunerated. But be very careful that the remuneration or the amount should just be enough to cover what has been lost. For example, transportation and the number of days that he was not able to work. It is illegal that you will offer a huge sum of money so that participants would join the study. For the lecture of Doctora Labial. Thank you very much, Doctora. The lecture was so inspiring. It was very informative and easily understood. That the communicating the research is very important, because it is others should see it. Kasi hindi pwedeng itago yung research at hindi pa kinabangan. Other researchers should see it and critique it, so that other people would know and be able to apply what you have researched. So I think that's about all, because everything was well explained by Dr. Labial. Thank you very much, Doctora.
Thank you
That's all,
so
Doctor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elvira, for your sharing and lessons learned. So may we call on our student from the doctoral program, Strategy and Management, Emil Hakob. Emil would like to share his slide. Go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
This is my key takeaways from the presentation delivered by the presenters for this webinar for today. With regards to action research, action research, as I understood, is a discipline that the process as the inquiry conducted by, for those who are taking action, the one who's actually involved with it. And the primary reason for their engagement in this action, just like what the doctor said about the ITs, is that the research is to assist the actor itself who's conducting it to improve and refining their own actions. The practitioners who engage in this action research inevitably find it to be more empowering experience. The research project's focus is how to determine the researchers who are also the primary consumers of the finding itself. So there are two types of action research that I got from this webinar. Is that one is participatory action research, which is PAR, and community-based participatory action research. When it comes to spiral in action research cycles, it involves planning, action, observation, and reflection. Planning action is made out of a system map and a stakeholders analysis map, which assists the researchers to plan accordingly. Wherein data analysis using the Vivo coding approach, familiarization of the data and generating initial codes, themes, searching review themes, and defining themes and final write-up are the key steps in order to complete such tasks. Once the analysis is complete, the implementation and communication plan involves stakeholders' goals, and the documentation of the research itself. On the other discussion about the medical research, my key takeaways are the following. Understood that medical research involves research in various fields, such as in biology, chemistry, pharmacology, and toxicology. The evaluation of ethical health and health-related research considerations should employ principles and values and procedures. A very notable topic about what the presenter or the doctor percent is about social value, which relates to the topic in such a way that the results will impact a large community or health problems. To obtain a valid consent is very important so that the researcher must inform the participant of all risks and benefits of being involved in the research. So there's a certain sense of transparency. However, the researchers should always comply with the principles of integrity, honesty, accuracy, and legitimacy in personal information collection, storage, and use, which adhere to the Data Protection Act of 2012. The researchers must respect the participants' right to privacy, whether they wanted to disclose this or not. In research involving human participants, the principle of justice refers to the primary be described as distributive justice, which is much more relevant to bioethical principles. And my last take on the last presentation for today is about communicating research output. Communicating research output takes planning and careful consideration of all the audiences who will be receiving this research. In formal presentation, it includes research question, the methodological approach used, significant findings, and a few final takeaways. Research results should be released as soon as possible. There are key strategies in communicating research findings orally. To name a few, research conferences delivered online or through a summit or a webinar, or video and audio recordings and through podcasts. Other strategies when it comes to communicating research is about written formats such as theses, dissertation, publications, and newsletters. Electronic databases, newspapers, and magazines are also being used to deliver such results. The characteristics of research report is made out of it should be concise, clear, honest, complete, and accurate. The purpose of communicating research findings, in my understanding, is that for others to critique, utilize, or even replicate or develop similar studies, the recognition, advancement, compensation, and contribution to the body of knowledge that can be beneficial to other researchers as well as theory, practices, changes, and for further studies. Thank you very much. Oh, one more thing. Reports for public consumption usually contain fewer details than reports for scholarly consumption. Thank you very much. Wow. A great afternoon, everyone.
Naka-mute po kayo, Doc Matt.
Thank you so much, AG, Elvira, and Emil, no, for those jot notes, no, on lessons learned on the three presenters this afternoon. So indeed, we have learned a lot, and I think we will put all these learnings into action as we prepare our paper, no, for this semester and for the next semester. So with this, may I request our participants and our resource speakers to join us in this photo op. So can we share our videos if you want, so we can have this documentation. I have with me 5 slides, so please have your smiles for 20 seconds because I'm not sure which slide you are in. So just give us a smile. Okay, let's start with the first slide, the first screen. Thank you. Next. Hold on. Okay. Next. And then next. Okay. Again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. To our dear resource speakers, Dr. Mercy, Dr. Leo, Attorney Boo, thank you so much. I am indebted. So,
Thank you also,
thank
Doc
you.
Thank
Thank
you
Matt.
you so
very
much.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you, thank you.
Safe po.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
May we request
Thank
all
you,
the
Doc Matt.
Thank you, Doc.
Bye.
may we request
Thank
all
you
the
Thank you
po.
students.
po. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc Matt.
Thank you. Lahat po ng estudyante, paki-remain for our short consultation. Especially those who are enrolled in the thesis and project course. Thank you. Please stay for a while. Okay, let me continue my presentation. We have a thing to submit on May 15. I think your professors are accepting and ready to evaluate your submissions. So for thesis project proposal, let us call this one a concept paper, no? So thesis project proposal format, which is actually this word count expected, no? This kind of uh, alignment in terms of the subtitles, no? From the introduction to the conclusion. These are all taken from the memorandum of the president, which we follow. So we need this for the next semester, no? So yung mga word count, no, na ini-expect dito. So pang next semester, yun ang ini-expect na number of words, no? But for May 15, for this semester, so let me point this out, no? So for thesis concept paper format, no? I will distribute this again. Okay, I put a logo and then there is a reminder, no? So we can segregate when we submit this one to PCU. So we know which paper are you? Are you in the thesis or are you in the project? No? So please utilize the heading, no? Our header. No? So this is for PCU Collab Master Thesis Paper. So for this is for the thesis paper. No? So you have your proposed thesis title, the authors, introduction, rationale, research objectives, literature review, research design, conclusions, and then references. No? So we shall be using font size 12, Arial, and then MRAD kasi is single space, no? But some may mga mentors nagsabi, maybe we can have 1.5 or if that is the case, no? Okay, but anyway, if you submit that, I'll just make some adjustments, no? Because as much as possible, we don't want yet lengthy paper, no? So because this is the concept paper, not the final one that we are supposed to be approved, no? This is for this semester, no? So ang sinabi natin, yung makakaya nating gawin, no? So dapat meron na tayong working title, no? So nakapag-agree na kung who will be collaborating on our thesis. So if that is individual or collaborative, no? So please write the names, no? Complete names. Okay, in the introduction simply would you forward the elements of why the thesis is timely, relevant, significant, no? So this is the marketability of the research, no? So how will I this is one way ticket to approving a research, no? So you have to justify bakit siya kailangan ngayon gawin, no? So timeliness, relevance, significance. So yun ang malalagay dun sa introduction, okay? So parang mina-market mo yung gusto mong mangyari na research. Okay, and of course rationale, these are this is the yung sinabi, no, yung social value, no? So ano ba yung value nito, no? So you can take a look at the perspective of a problem, no? Maybe present some references of data from the macro to the micro, no? Bakit na-come up mo ito na problema na research, no? So you present that, no? So parang yun na nga yung value, no? ng yung ginagawa nating research. And then research objectives, so this is now important to make the design, no? So it is on the objectives and the problems, research problems, no? Kasi yung objectives magiging declarative siya dun sa problem. Okay, so i-state mo siya into a declarative statement when you write your SOP or statement of the problem. So if that objective will end up into a policy making, will end up into an implementation of something, will end up into a program, implementation, development. Okay, so it is written in a way that there is a process, di ba? So halimbawa from i-profile mo, tapos titignan mo yung mga variables, tapos titignan mo yung mga relationship, no? So that is the third part, and then what would be the end point, no? So is it towards policy making or intervention or development? No? And then review of related literature. These are the parallel, no? So kung ito yung setting mo na mga variables, may mga another setting which has the same variables as you are looking into investigating, pero nasa ibang setting, no? So that becomes the related review, no? So parallel, no? So parehas kayo ng variables pero ginagamit siya sa ibang setting. So ano ba ang kanilang mga findings, no? Paano ba nila nagawa ang kanilang research, no? So those are similar to you but in another setting. So research literature, next semester talaga maramihan siya, no? But as of today for your grade, no, you have to give us impact literature, no? Talagang that will justify that your problem is also relevant, no? Okay? Kasi ito din ang iniimbestigahan ng iba, no? So show there, no? Show there that your variables are working, your variables are valid, no? Because these are also said by other researchers. So replication, di ba? Replication, so we can add value to knowledge, no? And then research design, no? So these are small statements of what is your method, no? Descriptive, correlational, is it quantitative, qualitative, what are your respondents, possible respondents, where your data will be coming from, what is the central analysis, no? Are you talking about respondents, or are you looking at a panel data or institutional data? So you don't need a questionnaire, no? Because there are data available. And then how will you process it, no? What would be your possible instrumentation if that is the case, that you want to gather data from respondents or informants? So you need to make sure, no, na meron kang at this time may not be the real data, the real instrument, no? But meron kang source na pwede itong pagkukunan mo ng source, no? Yung variable na sinasabi, hahanap ka dito ng instrument, no? So yun ang matrix ng research design. Okay, and how will you analyze your gathered data? So yung analysis, okay? Conclusion, this is really the one thing that we mentioned, no? Yung last meeting, no? Query, which the memo, no, of the president stated there a conclusion, because in every research there is always an intended endpoint, no? So this is your expected conclusion. We don't have yet the data, but in doing a research, you know already where you are going to, no? So a conclusion may be that you are able to produce uh, a matrix of compliant criteria, no, for a hospital system, for system management, something like that, no. So mayroon ka ng napupuntang conclusion, or there is already a possible intended policy area, no, which you would like to deal with, no, once you have the data. Okay, so yun yung mga yun ang intended output, in other words, no? Intended output, no? Yun ang I think, no, if we go back to the memo of the PCU, so it's all there in our Google Classroom, no? So these are all taken there in the Google Classroom, the memo of PCU on doing the research, no? Our submission and references. Some are asking how to go about references. So you just have to have APA version 6. So just the normal the version of APA. No? So it's a author type. No? Yung sa writing references. Okay? So ito yung mga nasa thesis. Walang pinagkaiba dun sa mga taga-project paper, no? Walang pinagkaiba. So the only difference here is that yung research design, no? Okay? So there might be some difference in the research design which you would like to intend to include, no, or integrate, no, or how you will come up with the output, no. So research design, some would look into a capstone or a strategy management, no? So pwede namang ganon. Yung mga talagang may developmental approach, no, dun sa kanilang project. Okay? If system approach na project, so you always still have to create your own matrix, no? Paano ba ipaprocess yung problem and the solution, no, to the problem to arrive at a certain expected output. So this is for the master project paper. Okay? So may kanya-kanya po tayong papel, same naman ang content, same ang general, no, requirements. Yung papel lang ang importante, so we can segregate, no? Pag na-submit na, alam namin kung sino yung thesis, kung sino yung project. Okay? Para pag na-forward natin sa PCU, naka-ano na siya, naka-categorize na, no? Okay, so this is all for those enrolled in the thesis and project seminar course. Okay, so please make sure that you write your name, no? Kasi meron ako, umaamin ako na meron akong minsan, no, nagkamali dun sa mga, especially the family name, no? So make sure that from then on, no, when we submit papers or submit documents to PCU, yung intended name talaga na arrangement na gusto natin, no? So especially for women, no? So please make sure that ano ba talaga ang gusto nyong name, no? Na align dun sa mga documents na ipapasa natin sa PCU. Okay? Kasi there are some queries on the arrangement of names sa mga ID, sa mga registration certificate, no? So please advise, no? Advise, so we correct the data now. Okay? It's importante. So ito yung dalawang forms, yun lang naman ang na-add ngayon sa ating discussion. I leave the rest, no, yung ating diniscuss last meeting. So let's just focus on this, no, for our submission on May 15. Okay? So ito yung dalawa, no? Isa para sa mga magti-thesis, yung isang form naman para sa project. Okay. Questions on that? So far?
Hello, Doc. Si Ariel po.
Yes.
May tanong lang ako isa, Doc.
Okay.
Required ba talaga yung references pagdating sa project?
Oh, yung ginamit nating literature review.
No, when it comes kasi, Doc, let's say dun sa thesis sa project ko, sort of thesis na planning ko, di ba? It is an actual incident that happened which
Okay.
yes.
Anything that is academics, we always go back to the books, no? So our practice here is presenting our output academically. So unlike when we say project, bigyan mo ako ng bahay. So anong bahay yan, no? So we always go back to design. Where is that design? Who is vouching your procedure? So these are all review of literature or review of other studies, no? So if you want a house that is anong tawag dito, yung environmental friendly, so there are a lot of studies that looks into a greenhouse, no? So this could be references. Tama ba? I don't see any problem with references because our submission, whether it is a project, really has to go back to the fundamentals, no? So we are looking into whether it is a project. There is always the baseline, no? Di ba yung kanina nga, bakit gusto mo ito? Bakit ito yung research? Para kanino? So talagang may ano yan eh. May backup na ito din ang sinabi ng iba, no? Tungkol dito sa project na to. Because it's all throughout, at the end of the day, it's social value, no? So dapat na may naka-backup na sinabi din ng iba. Okay?
It's just a matter na kasi, Doc, in my part of job, like health and safety, each project there's a different type. We are the one who is creating the process of incident investigation and reporting. So each project it has different procedure.
Just to make it short, if that is a class assignment, no, patawaran kita, no? Pwede tayong mag-negotiate. But this is an academic terminal paper for your graduation. So it needs the process of parang ano kasi yun eh, yung simple logic, no, na makongkreto yung gagawin mo, no? Ito yung procedure. Tama? Ito yung mga pinagbabasihan natin. Okay? So it's not about ito na nga oh. Bakit kailangan ko pa yung mga aklat-aklat? That's parang hindi na siya hindi I don't know ha. Parang hindi ko siya nakukuha na bakit hindi kailangan. So I think we don't need to debate on that. We just have to follow. It's fulfilling in a way because you really have to learn from what others are also doing. Whether it is in the engineering world, whether there were presentations, there were a lot of journals in construction, there are a lot of publications in engineering, there are a lot of publications in artificial intelligence if you want to. But all of those really have a ground literature, a solid foundation of what you think, what is logical. No? Where are you coming from? Who is vouching you? No? So, parang hindi ko nakita yung bakit hindi siya kailangan. Okay?
Sir Matt?
Yes.
When we submit this, we follow the word count?
Hindi.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Yun, that's clear.
Yeah. Ang word count, mangyayari siya next sem.
Yes po.
Dadagdagan na natin. Kasi ito na yung meron ng uupong panel, no? May titingin na, no? So for May 15, concise,
yes,
enough, no? Para magkaroon ka ng justice sa grade, di ba? So para bang ito yung munang importanteng bagay na para masabi nila na tama ang project ko, reasonable, logical, no? So ito yung mga main ingredients muna.
Okay po,
So,
sir. That's clear. Thank you.
5 pages, 4 pages. Parang ganon. May nag-submit na, no? Dun sa mga nag-submit, I would like to ask you to go back again, not to change but just to change the paper. I will be sending this paper format, itong yung may logo, para uniform ang pag-submit natin sa PCU. So dito natin ilalagay ang ating mga sagot, no? So isang papel tayo. Okay? So I will send this one dun sa group chat for your copies. So just use the thesis or the project. Other questions?
Sir, the way I understand it, parang sasabit namin lahat So parang do I get it right na parang kayo na rin na magso-sort out if it's good for thesis or
No.
is it a project?
No, you have to write which paper you intend. So kasi magbibigay ako ng dalawang papel. Yung header niya thesis, yung isang header niya project. So ano bang isasubmit mo? Good for a thesis or a project?
Kasi di ba doon tayo nagkakaroon ng problema sa research research guidelines?
Design.
The research design, I mean. So, baka kasi meron kaming isubmit na parang it's more on thesis than on a project.
Yeah, pwedeng mangyari siya. Pwedeng mangyari siya na i-advise na this is good for a thesis, why not go? Parang ganun.
Okay.
Pag hindi ka ma-convince, then we go back to the project, di ba? Parang you submit it to us and then we evaluate, this is good for a thesis, why not we pursue on this? Now, if the student is not convinced, wala akong time, pwede dito na lang ako sa project, okay. So no problem. Parang ganun.
Okay, thank you.
So yung isasubmit natin, ang mga professors maglalagay ng mga additional inputs, no, para mabuo natin. Kasi wala pa tayong identified na mga advisors, no. So yun pa yung aking hinihingi dun sa PCU. So sino ba yung mga advisor, ganyan, para sa students ng MM Collab. So at the moment, ito yung pinaka natin, scaffold, pinaka sandata natin na we are ready. So these are our interests. So if this is a project, then this is project. If this is good for a thesis, then this is for thesis. Ganyan. Okay ba yun?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So any other questions? So this is our last meeting. I hope yung iba, please join. May mga consultation ng mga professors. So for hospital administration, we will set our one consultation, maybe on Thursday. Are we available? Kung wala naman, it's okay. Pag ayos na tayo, okay naman. So kung hindi na kailangan, no? So you just have to PM me or what? Doc Batin, no? So para sa mga hospital administration, no? Yung iba kay Doc Santos, then yung iba kay Doc Adalid. So I have seen the submissions, no, sa ating Google Classroom. Pwede rin dun mag-submit para makita ng mga prof. Okay? Just make sure pag link, naka-share siya, no? Kasi we have to ask admission for access. So, And then mas maganda kung gagamit na tayo ng word format, yung may header. Para masanay tayo na para yung nagbabasang professor, alam niya na ito ay project, ito ay thesis. Okay? So gamitin natin yung header ng thesis ba tayo or project. Okay? So yun ang requirement natin sa course na to, ha. So yung mga nag-enroll ng ano. So yun ang bubunuin natin sa May 15. So yun ang format. So kayo nang bahala kung ano yung ipapasok nyo na data. So doon mag-gauge yung ating assessment, yung score. Okay, so I think if there are no more questions.
Sir,
Yes,
good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, available po kayo Thursday, sir?
Oh, pwede tayo sa Thursday. 6 o'clock?
Yes, sir. Probably, sir, our group will No, sir. Yung group lang po namin sa paper, we might consult you on Thursday, sir.
Sorry. Meron pala akong klase Thursday.
Sir?
Sorry, meron pala akong klase.
May klase po kayo?
Sorry.
What time, sir?
Wednesday?
Sir, may klase po kami. May makeup class po kami kay Dr. Bautista po, sir.
Tuesday.
Okay, sir.
Tuesday?
Okay lang po, sir. Tuesday, sir, is fine, sir.
Okay. Saan ko ipopost yan? Sa group 1 o group 2?
Sir, actually, sir, yung group po namin, sir,
small
will
group lang
discuss.
tayo.
Opo, sir. Opo.
Okay.
Kasi, sir, we'll just consult about our paper on what path we're going to take, sir.
Okay. Sige.
Opo. Thank you, sir.
May,
Thank you, sir.
May gano'n naman. Yung isang group ng crisis management, yun. So, nag-focus dun kami. So, parang small group lang. Paano nila gawin? Yeah, we can. Pero ang ano dito, isulat lang. Ano yung makakaya nating isulat? Wala pa ditong data, ha? So, this is just the skeletal. Ma-justify, ma-market, no? Makita na importante, kailangan, relevant, timely ang study. Ito ang mga literature na nagbabouch. Ito yung mga studies na nagja-justify na nag-i-exist ang aking variable, nag-i-exist ang ganito. No? Tapos, ganito ko siya iproseso, ganito ko siya iko-kolekta ang data. Yun lang naman ang importante dun eh. And all of those needs references, syempre. Diba? So, books, publications, no? All those are references, no? So, yun ang bakit kailangan may reference. Kasi nga, scientific inquiry. No? So, kailangan nating may nagbabouch, no? Na ang ating variables nag-i-exist, no? Ang ating setting pwede, no? Okay? Yung method na gagawin natin valid, no? So these are all parts of referencing, citing our sources. Okay? So with that, we conclude this afternoon sa...
Sir, sorry,
Yes.
sir. Last po. Sir, sa Tuesday, sir, your available time is from 6 p.m. po.
What time do you want?
Sir, we will adjust, sir, to your time, sir.
Yeah, what time? Actually, I'm...
Sir, we're usually available, sir, by 6 onwards, sir.
Okay. So, no problem. Mga 6, 7, ganun.
Sige sir, 7 po. No problem, sir.
No problem.
7 p.m. sir. Set po, sir. Thank you po, sir.
Google Meet tayo.
Sir?
Google Meet. I will send the Meet link to your PM. I will PM the
Link.
and then you just share it to the group.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you po.
I'll note on that. Tuesday. Okay, so thank you so much for joining. I hope na meron pa rin tayo sa ating sarili na kakayanin natin to. Okay? So, nakasuporta lang ang faculty ng Collab. So, kaya natin to. So, thank you so much and I hope na kayo ay nasa pang-apat na subject, please. Huwag natin pong kalimutan. Pag walang pang-apat na subject, please tell me so I can endorse you to a professor kasi dapat meron po tayong grade na 4, for this semester. So dapat naka-4 na po tayo. Okay? And also those professors under PCU main, I am asking also their grades because that is part of our contract, So I hope they can cooperate. I already have some grades dun sa ibang prof, especially sa hospital administration, So baka pwede niyong maligawan ang mga prof nyo kasi meron tayong clearance, Ilalagay ko yung grade nyo dun sa clearance, Ito yung isa nating dokumento na magpapatunay, na meron tayong mga grades, So as promised dito sa Collab, wala tayong incomplete, So kailangan nating magka-grade, okay? Para sabay-sabay tayong gagraduate. So pakiligawan naman yung mga profs nyo na baka pwede ko nang mahingan ang grade. Okay? Lalo na sa hospital administration. Sa isang grupo meron na meron na ako na-receive na grade. Okay? So, thank you. Good afternoon. Happy Labor Day month. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Salamat.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Doc.
Salamat po. Thank you po.
Thank you.